Good evening, I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily for Friday, April 1st. Well, today has been an emotional day for Indigenous Canadians who have finally received an apology from the Roman Catholic Church for its role in the residential school system. Pope Francis made the historic apology at the Vatican, begging forgiveness and telling about 190 Indigenous delegates that he hopes to visit Canada around the Feast of St. Anna, which falls on July 26th. Chief Gerald Antoine says Pope Francis recognized the cultural genocide that was inflicted on Indigenous children, calling today a first step on the path of reconciliation. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says today wouldn't have happened without the bravery and determination of residential school survivors who journeyed to the Vatican to tell their truths and painful memories. Switching gears here now to the national price on pollution, which goes up another $10 per ton of greenhouse gas emissions today. The increase brings the total price to $50 per ton, adding another 2.2 cents to the cost of a liter of gasoline, or 11 cents total. The federal levy applies directly in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. But British Columbia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island are also raising their provincial carbon levies to stay in line. Quebec and Nova Scotia use cap-and-trade systems, and Newfoundland and Labrador will raise its price to $50 a ton later in 2022. Some good news for the travel industry, which took a big step toward returning to the days of pre-pandemic travel. Vaccinated travelers can now enter Canada without a COVID-19 test. While that has sparked a surge in travel bookings, many parts of this country and others are seeing rising cases of a more contagious subvariant of Omicron that could lead to restrictions being imposed again. Meanwhile, Canada's Chief Public Health Officer says the country is in a period of pandemic transition that might see further waves of COVID-19 cases later this year. But she says we are in a stronger position to get back to the things we love, thanks to vaccines and personal protective measures like masking. Dr. Tam says those tools can help to reduce the impact and severity of COVID-19. Moving to Canada's military mission in Iraq and the Middle East now, which is being extended for another year until 2023. The Canadian Armed Forces first deployed troops to Iraq in October of 2014, but Canada has been steadily reducing its military footprint in the region amid other emerging threats such as Russia, China, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, Canada is also taking part in an international war crimes investigation, sending about a half dozen extra RCMP investigators to The Hague this week. They're going there to assist in the International Criminal Court investigation of alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity by Russia in its invasion of Ukraine. International Development Minister Harjit Sajjan says Russia's blocking of humanitarian aid to Ukraine and its bombing of medical facilities should be the subjects of an international war crimes investigation. On the East Coast, the minimum wage increases today in 2 maritime provinces. In Prince Edward Island, it increases by 70 cents to $13.70 per hour. New Brunswick's minimum wage increases by $1 to $12.75 per hour. The New Brunswick rate is scheduled to increase by another $1 on October 1st. Some relief for citizens in Iqaluit. The Prime Minister has announced $214 million in federal funding to fix the water system in the city. The Nunavut capital's water has been contaminated with fuel twice in the last 6 months. Mr. Trudeau says the money will be used to create a new water reservoir and water distribution system. Canadian Olympic swimmer Brent Hayden has retired again. Swimming Canada made the announcement this morning. Mr. Hayden won bronze in the men's 100-meter freestyle at the 2012 London Olympics. The Mission BC swimmer also won the World Championship in the same discipline in 2007. Mr. Hayden retired in 2012, but then returned after a 7-year absence, announcing his comeback in September 2019. He is the oldest Olympic swimmer in Canadian history at the age of 37. Scientists are crediting a unique program involving guardians from local First Nations with the tripling in size of a BC caribou herd in less than a decade. This while other such herds in Canada struggle to survive. The program sees the guardians live alongside pregnant caribou cows in penned-off high-altitude valleys. They do this for months at a time in order to keep them safe. Naomi Owens-Beek of the Sato First Nation says her people came up with the idea 9 years ago to try to restore the caribou. We have Forum Daily's Energy Update with GasWizard.ca's Dan McTeague up next. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. Up next, we take a look at energy prices and policy with Dan McTeague, Senior Petroleum Analyst at GasWizard.ca. He joins us now on Forum Daily's Energy Update.
Well, Nima, thanks again for that. And what a week, tumultuous week on markets all over the map. We've been saying that for a little while, but this time it was to the downside. I can't remember the last time oil dropped 11% in 1 week, but trust me when I say that this is a head fake, and it was done for two reasons. Well, actually three, all of which are going to prove to be highly suspicious. The first one, of course, the yet again, another variation of COVID out of China. Not sure if China's doing it because it's real or because China wants to drop the price of oil so they can hoard for much less a smaller price. But that obviously isn't going to work. Saudi Arabia has actually raised its price for Asian customers. The second, of course, we thought this week that Russia was going to move away, get out of Kiev, and on their way to some kind of negotiation with Ukraine. That turned out to be false. And markets eventually realized that. And the final one, the foolish decision by President Biden to try to tap into the emergency reserves the United States has, not just for its own country, but for the rest of the world, by drawing 1 million barrels a day. That will obviously put the United States in violation of its commitments to the OECD to ensure a stable, significant amount. And it won't do much longer term for oil. In fact, what it's going to do is tell oil producers globally in the United States, don't bother producing because we're going to continue to flood the market. So you know what? They're going to stop producing, as if they didn't have a reason given the woke green policies that Canada has adopted for years, but the United States is now double downing on, if you will. But still, as of April 1st, the United States is still importing 800,000 barrels of Russian oil. That's an absolute shame and a travesty, as is the move by the Biden administration, the Democrats, to go and bend a knee to dictatorships like Maduro's Venezuela or the regime in Iran looking for extra oil. I'll put that aside for now to recognize that what it's done is it's dropped the price of oil and a bit of gasoline. So we've seen an overall decrease of about 3 to 4 cents a liter in the past week. But no sooner does that happen, the provinces that have a backstop have been treated to Trudeau's carbon tax increase today, April Fools. So on average, about a 2.25 cent a liter increase. And that, of course, is now pushing gasoline to about 12.5 cents a liter with HST/GST. That is higher than the rate of inflation, given that it only started 2 years ago. And of course, we have to look at diesel, which now stands, if you look in provinces like Ontario, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, now over 15 cents a liter. That's the fluid. That's the fuel that runs your economy. That's the workhorse fuel. And without that, you're in very serious trouble. Sorry about the dog in the background, Nima. But the reality is that this is going to lead to much higher inflation here in Canada. And my perspective on this is that banks, the central bank, StatsCan, and others are going to have to start to get real about true numbers that are starting to impact Canadians. And it really doesn't matter where you are across Canada. None of us are escaping the high costs, not just of energy, for heating, for transportation, but now food. When you start messing around with food, as we're seeing today, and prices are going to go much higher this summer, expect that there will be more movement to try to push this government and its policies out. While they're trying to attack the oil and gas sector, the rest of the world is wondering, scratching its head, asking why a clean country, democratic country, human rights laden country, one that has a very strong governance when it comes to energy, is trying to deny itself. The United States has recognized today the world is short 2.5 million barrels. If we hadn't killed Keystone, if we hadn't killed Energy East, if we hadn't killed Northern Gateway, Canada could be the balance in terms of energy security. That it would give the country and the world a much greater perspective in terms of energy reliability, but more importantly, a much more and less dangerous place in which the world finds itself today. Inflation is going to continue to be an issue. The Canadian dollar continues to weaken. 125 pennies to buy US dollar means that our purchasing power has been eroded by 25%. Last time we saw $100 oil, the Canadian dollar was much stronger. So we're really painting ourselves into a corner in this country. And don't be surprised this week if that by Sunday, although we're seeing some prices drop into the weekend, by next week, I would say starting Thursday or Friday, Nima, it's fair to say that we're going to see gas prices start to move back up. It was short-term gain and a short-term fix by the Biden administration to use the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. It's going to come back and pinch everybody when we see oil moving right back to $1.10, $1.15, or $1.20, regardless of what happens in Eastern Europe. So that's it for this week. Not great news. Thanks to the federal government for making life more miserable at the pumps. At the end of the day, we'll keep talking about it, and you'll continue to keep paying for it. We'll talk to you next week, Nima.
Sounds like your dog's not enjoying these rising prices either, Dan. All right, that was Dan McTeague, Senior Petroleum Analyst at GasWizard.ca. He's also the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. Stay with us. More news from around the world up next. Welcome back. Now it's time for Forum Daily's weekly cryptocurrency and digital asset update. We're joined by Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here. Take it away, Catherine.
Thanks, Nima. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly crypto and digital asset update. I am Catherine Murray. Well, we are seeing cryptocurrencies trend a little bit lower this morning. However, we have seen some significant moves higher in cryptocurrencies, putting the current market value at $2 trillion. Bitcoin, for one, is up by about 1% week over week, hitting that $44,500 mark. Now, one of the key drivers to the upside has been cited as a move by a blockchain company, in particular. A Forbes Top 30 Under 30 blockchain founder reportedly plans to purchase billions of dollars of Bitcoin to act as a reserve for its stable coin. Interestingly, this individual also tweeted out following this, warning the Bitcoin bears that their days are numbered. If you want to follow him on Twitter, it is under Do Kwon. Interestingly, following this tweet, we did see Bitcoin move higher, as I mentioned, with that 45,000 handle on it, actually up to about 48,000. And apparently this is in part due to some of the short squeezing that occurred after he announced that he was going to be out there purchasing billions of dollars of Bitcoin. We actually have reports that it was about a $300 million short squeeze. We also saw volumes corroborate this, where the volumes are up by about 16% versus the 30-day average. So interesting to see that this is perhaps one of the drivers to the upside of the move today. Of course, when you have some announced buyers in the market, you often see the sellers move to the sidelines. Away from that, important to note that we did see one of the biggest heists in cryptocurrency this week. Hackers stole about $600 million from a blockchain network that was connected to the people's online game Axie Infinity. This has been, as I mentioned, one of the biggest attacks, and it certainly does underscore the security concerns that we have with some of the technology associated with decentralized finance. According to Chainalysis, approximately $2.3 billion have been stolen from DeFi platforms in 2021. That is up by over 1,000% year over year. Now, shifting focus here a little bit, we have further signs of expansion into various crypto blockchain platforms. TP ICAP, which is the world's largest intradealer broker, they facilitate trades between hedge funds, investment banks, and financial institutions. They've added 2 more companies to their custody network. Also, geographically, we, of course, note so many various countries around the world expanding their crypto offering. Israel's bank Leumi announced plans to launch crypto trading for their clients. The bank says that it will allow and enable clients to be able to buy, hold, and sell cryptocurrencies, starting with Ethereum as well as Bitcoin. Apparently, it's one of the first banks to actually do this and offer this. There's only a few other around the world, in particular, DBS Bank in Singapore and a few banks in Switzerland. We also, of course, continue to see fundraising occur within this space. Interestingly here, a Vancouver-based company called Layer Zero Labs, which is the firm behind blockchain bridging protocol Stargate. They raised $135 million, and that values their company at $1 billion Importantly, the raise was led by FTX as well as Andreessen Horowitz, so very well-known names in the crypto space and overall investment space, I should say. Also, crypto investment services provider blockchain.com said that in their latest round of funding that they closed values their company at $14 billion. Lastly, kind of interesting here, there's always been a big debate since we saw the onset of cryptocurrencies, which is a better hedge, gold or digital currencies? Well, it's interesting here, and of course that hedge would be against inflation as well as various central bankers devaluing our currencies, fiat currencies that is. Well, related to that, currencies, blockchain, the gold industry apparently is turning to blockchain to keep illicit gold bars off the market. This week, the London Bullion Market and the World Gold Council are developing a digital system to be able to track gold through the supply chain. They said this in a joint statement this week. So basically, they're going to be using blockchain to track gold, maybe your gold, from mine to vault. Nima, I'll leave it there. Back to you.
Blockchain and gold, that's an interesting development. Thanks for that, Catherine. That was Catherine Murray, host of The Buck Stops Here. Remember, for more analysis and news on the markets, be sure to follow her there. All right, we need to go on a quick break now, but when we come back, we'll take a look at what's happening around the world. Ukraine and Russia hold peace talks amid reported strikes. China opposes Western sanctions on Russia, and European Union inflation hits a record high. We'll have these stories and more up next on Forum Daily, so stay with us. Talks to stop the fighting in Ukraine have resumed as another attempt to rescue civilians from the besieged port city of Mariupol broke down. Russia accused the Ukrainians of launching a cross-border helicopter attack on an oil depot. The governor of Russia's Belgorod region reported the alleged airstrike caused multiple fires and injured 2 people. A Kremlin spokesman says the incident on Russia's territory could undermine Friday's negotiations by video link. Ukraine is denying responsibility for the attack. The International Committee for the Red Cross says complex logistics are still being worked out for the operation to get emergency aid into Mariupol and civilians out of the city. Meanwhile, China is renewing its criticism of Western sanctions against Russia and says it won't be forced to choose sides in the conflict in Ukraine. It comes as the European Union seeks China's assurances that it won't help Russia circumvent the economic sanctions. At an annual summit Friday, EU officials say they would be looking for signs that Beijing is willing to cooperate on bringing an end to the war. Other topics for the virtual meeting include China's travel ban on members of the European Parliament, Beijing's economic boycott of EU member Lithuania over its relations with Taiwan, the fate of a stalled investment agreement, and issues surrounding civil and political rights under China's authoritarian Communist Party regime. Well, all of this comes as inflation in Europe has soared to another record. It's a fresh sign that rising energy prices, fueled by Russia's war in Ukraine, are squeezing consumers and adding pressure on the central bank to raise interest rates. Official EU figures show consumer prices in the 19 countries that use the euro currency rose by an annual rate of 7.5% in March. The latest reading smashed the record set in February when it hit a revised 5.9%. Meantime, people across the United Kingdom will face tough choices in the coming months. This comes as energy costs for millions of households are set to rise by 54% on Friday. It is the second big jump in energy bills since October, and a third may be ahead. This comes as rebounding demand from the COVID-19 pandemic and now Russia's war in Ukraine push energy prices even higher. Those costs are the main driver of rising consumer prices. While inflation is a worldwide phenomenon, it's a bigger issue in Britain because it's more exposed to rising natural gas prices, even more than its European neighbors. Moving to the U.S. economy now, which added 431,000 jobs in March alone. Today's report is seen as a sign of the economy's resilience in the face of a still destructive pandemic and the highest inflation rate in 40 years. The U.S. jobless rate dipped to 3.6%, which is the lowest level since the pandemic started. In a move to ease international concerns over a new security pact, the Solomon Islands say that it will not allow China to build a military base on its territory. But the proclamation is likely to do little to ease international fears over this new security alliance. Micronesia has told the Solomon Islands it has security concerns about what it is calling a novel and unprecedented arrangement. Micronesia's president says the two countries were battlegrounds during World War II. He warns that this could happen again as China, the U.S., and Australia assert themselves in the region. Turning to Ethiopia, where a long-awaited convoy of trucks carrying food aid has entered territory controlled by fighters that are loyal to the fugitive leaders of the Tigray region. This is the first humanitarian convoy to do so since December 14th. The United Nations World Food Programme said the arrival of the trucks on Friday came 8 days after Ethiopia's federal government declared an immediate humanitarian truce. The UN estimates that 90% of Tigray's 6 million people are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. We end tonight's cast with a children's book made by a media company in Denmark with the intention of welcoming women and children fleeing Ukraine into the country. The book is called Welcome to Denmark, and it's being handed out free of charge. The media brand Studio wrote and illustrated the children's book, which serves as an introduction to life in Denmark. 20,000 copies were originally printed, and the book was translated into Ukrainian by a volunteer refugee. 72 hours after the book's availability was announced, all 20,000 copies had been claimed, and the company began a second printing run for another 20,000 books. The picture book also acts as a phrase book for newly arrived refugees. It will hopefully allow refugees to make connections and help them understand more about living in Denmark. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Remember, for more news on demand, you could always visit our website, thenewsforum.ca, and be sure to follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time.